The stories you're telling yourself in your head, are they stories of success? We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Katrin Becker, and on this podcast, we interview successful people from all different industries and professions because we want to learn what they have learned, because we can learn actually so much more from our failures than we do from our successes. And so if we can learn from their failures, we can either avoid them ourselves or we can fail through them faster. My guest today is an incredible writer, entrepreneur, and academic researcher from Indiana who is going to tell us all about how to rewrite your own story for success. So Rhonda Parker Taylor, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the awesome introduction. And the story of someone's success is so important to me because it's how we define ourselves.
Yeah.
And we can do the opposite. We can define ourselves as not being a success.
In fact, that's how most people do, right?
Right, exactly. So it's important that one realizes is how you define yourself is how other people will see you.
Well, and I think it's something that a lot of the women that I have worked with in my past will have some sort of baggage that they're bringing forward from their childhood. Of my mother told me I was this way, my father told me I was that way, something that someone said to them that they really bought into in the time and have a hard time letting go of. But really, we ourselves are capable of believing which stories we want, which ones we hold on to. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit about your story growing up in school of not thinking that you were, quote unquote, smart from failing kindergarten. I mean, that's gotta really put a story in one's head.
Hey, and that is my story of success. That's what's amazing about when you wrap your arms around your story. I mean, all of us have had trauma. All of us have had something said to us that was hurtful. All of us have had failures. So whatever those are also defines your story of success. Because I went from a child that struggled, and part of it was because I was social. Part of it was in my day, they didn't define learning disabilities. You just kept memorizing and taking the test and memorizing. And they didn't really have a lot of research into the different ways different people learned and some of the challenges they would have. So yeah, I my first academic experience was to flunk kindergarten. When it was time to move on, my teacher and the administrators met with my parents, said we think it would be best if she stayed back. So then that made challenges the whole rest of my academic journey. One, the class above me knew at some point I was in their class, and now I wasn't. And then the class I was in, I was one of the oldest ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I also was a more mature, and so then I ended up being a caretaker of people. And so it started my journey from that point. But then I still had the challenges. My first thing I started doing was focusing instead of so much on academics, but on the social aspects of me. I, became friends and became the one that would bring people into the circle, because we were a very small school. There was only 50 in my graduating class. So I focused on the social, and I just kind of shunned it off, didn't even acknowledge that there was an issue, just did the best I could do at the time until it became my senior year. And then we had to pass proficiency tests to graduate, where today's environment's a little different, and they have different tracks and all these. You either passed or you failed.
Yeah, it was a different world.
It was a totally different world. So I had a young teacher. I'll call her young. She was already been teaching about 20 years by the time she had me in my senior year. And she said, I will tutor you over the summer so you can pass. And I said, okay. So I had a job, and I was prepared to pay her, and we sat on her floor at her home that summer. And then when it came time to pay, She said, no, you just passed the test.
Hmm.
And so that changed everything that, occurred in my life, because I went from someone that couldn't pass the test to getting a mentor and pass the test. And then I ended up going to college.
And that's such a story that I think so many people, particularly women, experience of us being told what we're capable of
Mm-hmm.
and accepting it, and then being like, gosh, why do I feel so uncomfortable? Oh, because I'm in someone else's container.
Exactly. So for me, I thought I had to stay in the social realm. I had to stay in the fashion. I had to stay in the pageant world. I had to base it on the outward part of me rather than the inner ability to thrive.
Mm.
So, had I not had that first experience that changed my journey, my journey may have been totally different. So everything we do in our lives really affects our story of success. And we're the ones that define it, because once I realized, oh, wait a minute, I can go to college. Well, so I went to college for fashion at first, because I thought, okay, I know that I can function here again. I'm fearful of stepping out of that bubble and being vulnerable and saying, I can be a businesswoman, I can be a congressman, but in my dreams, that's what I was. When I would sit down in my private time, I would think, oh, I could go to Washington, or I could be, own my own business. And I never thought that it would happen for me. I thought I had to follow another model. And I did, and that wasn't the case for me. I got to school and found out I could get A's.
Hmm.
And it was a totally different thing. So then I ended up getting my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate, not obviously not all at once, but I made that journey and realized, wait a minute, I had a teacher that and boy, it was economics. And
Hmm.
math and economics still to this day is a challenge for me. But, I was walking out and he had given me the hardest time, and always was challenging me and challenging me. And I'm like, why does this man hate me so much? And then at the end of the semester, as I was walking out, he said, you're smarter than you sound
Mm.
and you act. That was a defining moment,
Yeah.
because all my life I thought it was dumb. So for someone to say that, and then I'm walking out, I'm like, well, why was he being nice to me now? And I still was questioning it. And you have to, and it made me though look at what he was saying. My language, because I'm from a small town, was small town. So my expression of self was limiting. Then I had to look at what else he said. He said, you smarter than you sound and smarter than you act and present yourself. So I had to face those fears and say, wait a minute, if I want to be taken seriously as a woman, I need to change some things up here.
Right.
So I had to do the work.
Well, and what's so beautiful about that is that we're able to make a choice and a change at any time, at any point. It's never that, oh, I've been this way so long, I can't change, and saying I came from a small town, this is how I talk, and there's nothing I can do about it. But yes, you can.
And you can become the person that you imagine yourself to be.
Yeah.
So my definition of self and why I enjoy what I do for a living had to evolve to realize, wait a minute, you can be who you want to be and how you want to be. It's all your definition within yourself. Be prepared, practice positivity, and stay disciplined to who you want to be. And a lot of times people say, well, you're always the luckiest person I've ever seen. But that's not really the model that I've experienced in life. Actually, to me, luck is taking preparation and opportunity and bringing them together.
Right. Right.
And then you find the lessons learned along the way, because boy, trial and error will teach you a few things too, won't it?
Yes, I am definitely a person, for better or for worse, that's trial and error is my preferred way of learning.
It's a game of uncle with life. You remember that game you played when you were a kid, and you grabbed each other's hands and you entwined them, and then you try to act like you're busting each other's knuckles, and then whoever says uncle first, you let go, and you don't hurt each other. Well, that's what life can be, especially if you're strong-headed and strong mind, because you do. It's a lesson of finding the lessons through the trial and error.
So you went into academics after going through fashion, having these life learnings. Was there some piece of you that went into academics as a way to give back to those teachers that had mentored you and believed in you?
I think it was twofold. Yes, it was a definite yes for that. And I wanted to show others that they could do it and that they were worth it. And all of those things, all those wonderful things that you think of teachers with passion. But I also think I wanted to prove to myself I could do it. I could be one of those people. I not only could give to them, but hey, guess what? I'm not dumb. That was my story of success for that season, right? Because here I went from failing kindergarten to now I have a doctorate in business. And where was the disconnect? The disconnect was me learning the value of me. So for me to become, first I started as a professor. That was for me to teach others and learn and be able to say, see, I did it. And then I said, you know what? There was an opportunity. I'd been working and I was getting my doctorate, and there was an opportunity at a community college. And they came to me and they said, you know that this position is going to open to run the campus, and we think you'd be a really good candidate.
Mm.
And it was one that was their model student was ones that struggled. So it was, but they had the medical, like the medical assisting, they had IT, business, so they had all the primary degree programs, but it allowed, as long as they had a high school diploma or equivalently, they didn't have all the rigor to get in.
Mm.
And I thought about it and I applied, and then I became the campus director for that college. And it was the most rewarding thing that I could have done for myself, because it was the giving back. It was no longer about my ego and who I was. And it shifted then to, hey, these people need to believe in themselves. These young students that are being modeled, and maybe life has told them at different points that they weren't going to be able to be successful, and I can help them navigate the same way that I did.
It's really interesting. My two children, they are both so brilliant, but in their own ways.
Oh, definitely.
And one of the issues where they fight the most is when my older son asks my younger daughter a math question or something she hasn't learned. And then he's like, ah, ha, ha, I'm so smart. You don't know this. That there's such this emphasis on the standardization that we experience in school, especially at these young, tender ages when we're still figuring out how we're developing. As you spent time in academics and being in these different leadership positions, do you see how things are changing? I mean, I understand there's a reason to have the standardization, but are there places and changes happening and coming where there's more space to allow for the individual gifts to shine through?
I think so. I think there's positives and negatives. One of the positives is people have learned more about ways to which people learn and absorb information. So there's more diversity in the curriculums as far as how one will teach the class. So they really are focusing more on not only is there lecture, but there's hands-on and group and different ways for people to absorb the information. That has definitely changed a lot for the better.
Mm.
I think because of computers, though, one of the drawbacks is the requirements that we make for students. You're going to have to dedicate 4 to 6 hours weekly on whatever class, which can be a little hard for the student that may be working or doing some of these other types of activities. They may have to, be on whether it be Pearson or Cengage or McGraw, which are all the main publishers of academic literature and textbooks and programs, but they have to go into their system, and they are required to do a lot of work online. And that takes a lot of time, but you also have to learn the information too. So,
Sure.
So drawbacks as far as computers allow for you to learn more and do more and have more ways of learning, but at the same time, the drawback is you're going to have to spend more time on it.
I mean, it's definitely a balance and one to evaluate, but as you've rewritten the story of your life and how you see yourself, which then allows people to inform them on how they see you, you actually wrote a book. Yeah. Not just the mental story and how you respond with the world, but you wrote a novel called Crossroads.
That's correct.
There it is.
For anybody that wants to explore it. So Crossroads is a labor of love for me. The idea came here again, one of those lessons learned. I had wrote a very large proposal in the business world for a company. And as I was walking out, the supervisor manager, I think he was a VP, said it was a great proposal, but you used the wrong insure.
Oh.
And they implemented it. We automated this whole call center. And I read a lot, and I always have liked books. And I'd always said I wanted to write a story. And right then and there, crystallized the fact that I needed to write a bestseller. Because for me, that was a failure, and it was one of those things that I had struggled with. So I'm like, I'm going to do it one day. And so ideas would continually go through my head. And then I was working on a project in the community that would oversee different courtroom cases and document whether they were fair and just, et cetera. And I realized, in the courtroom, there is no just, even if you're the winner's side, because you're experiencing something that most people never experience. There's a winner and a loser, prosecutor or defense or whatever on a criminal trial, but it changes your life forever. And so I knew I had the basis for Crossroads, and it's a novel based out of Indianapolis. I know the area well since I'm there. Every one of the scenes are in an area that actually exists. So it's, even though it's fiction, each one there's the history of the area to consider, and it's about people, which is what I love. And where I thought it was going to be just about the injustices of the system, I realized that these characters take over, because they really, as I was developing the story and developing the people, I realized that every time we have an incident in our lives, whether we go to a court because we get a jury notice, or whether we go into the grocery and we have an interaction with people, every time we meet somebody, we're assessing what's going on around them. And I'm one of those people that I can sit and watch people, and I can create a whole world of what I think they're doing by the time that they leave me.
I do the same thing.
And so in this book, it explores 3 emotions: anger, fury, and jealousy. And Proverbs says, anger is cruel, fury is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Envy makes the bones rot.
Mm.
And if you think of our lives, anytime we're dissatisfied or things aren't going right, typically those 3 emotions arise, and they cause crimes all the time, which obviously it's a crime novel. But if we allow them to take over our lives, we end up not living the life we're destined to. And that's what Crossroads is all about. Each person, as they're in that jury and they're navigating the death of this 15-year-old girl, is evaluating how this is impacting their lives. Meanwhile, things start happening to the people in the jury, and the police have to figure out why. And
Sounds riveting.
so, and that's what Merrill Hemingway said, and J.J. Hibbert from Mindster Media. Why they picked up the book, because they said, so many times we're navigating our lives and we're just simply not paying attention. That causes all kinds of problems for us
all the time.
It doesn't matter if it's our relationships, our work life, our private life. So if we're going around comparing ourselves, we're robbing ourselves from genuinely being happy and having joy.
Mm-hmm.
So that it became not only a captivating novel for me to write, but it also became kind of a model for me to be able to talk to others. And hopefully as people read fiction, that they're like, oh, I can apply this to my own life too. Well, what am I need to change? Because when Merrill Hemingway read it, and then she released a video on YouTube why she picked it for her book club. At the end, she realized that even herself, she had to rethink, where her loyalties lied. Why was she, what needed to be changed? And she said, even chocolate has an expiration date. And how many of us like chocolate? And
Definitely.
sometimes we have to make changes to be able to be happy and have joy, and in Paris' case, prevent herself from dying.
It's really so interesting. I've also written a book, and I'm connected with many authors, and I love asking people about the first book they wrote, whether it was fiction or nonfiction, because it is such a labor of love, and it's such a moment of vulnerability where you are exposing parts of yourself to the world that maybe haven't been seen yet. And so that can be quite a daunting experience for a lot of people. And I think it holds them back. What sort of lessons did you learn as you were going through and writing Crossroads?
Well, the first was start and finish. Do not stop. I have kind of something that I tell people that are writing their first novel, or any novel, even if it's their second or third: 1 page a day, and it's done in a year. Discipline, 1 page a day. You can do 3 pages, you can do 5 pages, you can do more than that, but get 1 page a day out of your head onto the computer, or however you're doing it. But so that was lesson 1: start and finish. Lesson 2 was listen to your beta readers, or whoever you have editing behind you, because you're not always right. And lesson 3 is face your fears again. And that's a common thing. I wrote Crossroads, and it sat. I had printed it, so in case anything happened, I had a copy, and I had, was querying it, and I quit querying, and I got busy in my life, and it was sitting there, and I went to go get a disc, and because back then we had discs, and we were just going in. I was going to transfer everything over, and it had been corrupted. And I had these images of typing it, and I was able to save it, but I was talking to my sister about the story, and she said, "So why haven't you done anything yet? What's stopping you?" And I said, "I don't know. I've got this going and this going and this going." She says, "No." She says, "You're afraid to be vulnerable."
Mm.
And I think that all of us, when we have a passion, we have to start thinking of why aren't we following, whether it be flowers or cooking or coffee or writing or whatever our passion is. We hold ourselves back from our own success out of fear.
Yeah.
They won't be successful, so make a game plan. And from that day on, because I didn't want to believe that it was good, I didn't want to be vulnerable. I had to write the game plan. How am I going to get it published? And I was like, okay, do I want to do the traditional route? Pick out the alternatives. Did I want to do self-published? Did I want to do a blended mix where you have someone else help you put it together? And I made my choice and I went with it. And it worked. But when you stay disciplined to that passion and you get a coach, and that's what I did. I went with a blended matrix of it, where the book was edited and it was a publisher, but they also helped me with the marketing, because I still had my own business that I had to run. Did I have time to learn about barcodes, and it needs to be on Ingram Sparks, and oh my goodness, it won't upload? Because I talked to people and they said, well, this is my experience when I self-published. You're going to spend X number of time for this, X number of time for this. And I'm like, ooh, too much time. I'm not going to be able to do that. So it has to be traditional, or it has to be a matrix. And then I'm like, oh, traditional takes 3 years. And I had a person back out after 2 years when I did it that way. So then it was like, okay, we're going to do this blended matrix.
Mm. Well, I'm glad you were able to figure out what was the best plan for you and best method, because it's lovely that there's so many options and you were open to exploring and finding what was the best one for you.
Right.
So how are you serving people now in today's capacity?
Well, I still do my consulting. I consult for academics, like what I do there is people that are doing their dissertations or their capstone projects. So that's still something that I do at the academic level. I did back off of teaching so much because I'd had a personal incident happen at that same age group, and I don't mind sharing it with people, because I think that life always hits, and sometimes people can use that as an excuse of not being their success or their authentic self. But what I learned from this incident, and I don't take it lightly, is life is about redefining who you are at all moments and stages of your life, because sometimes things happen, and you have to learn that when you have these things happen, that you may not be able to function the same way.
Right.
So some people fight with depression, or some people might fight with anxiety, or they might fight with the death of a loved one. Well, I had a death of a adopted son that was the same age group as the college group, and that changed my whole world. And I was like, how can I daily work with the same age group
Sure.
and still be able to be successful with them? And I realized that I had to change my model of what I did. So I'm like, okay, people don't know how to navigate their careers. They don't know how to navigate the academic process. I want to step back, let somebody else be the one that's there daily, in the lives, and teaching the core knowledge. And I want to teach them how to survive what life gives them. And that may mean that while you're in school, you may have something come up. It could be an illness. It could be a loved one that passes, or someone that's sick that you have to care for. And how do you still start and finish? When you're in a novel, how do you start and finish when all of a sudden your child has 104 fever and you don't know how to get it broken? How do you start and finish your story of success? So I've navigated from the daily aspects of teaching the knowledge to teaching being successful, looking at someone's dissertation and saying, okay, for you to be successful and complete this, this is what you need to do to be accepted in the scholarly academic community. And if someone's trying to change a job, this is what skills you need to do. Let's identify the skills you need to have to be able to change from customer service to, the medical community, whatever it might be that's in their dreams. And so I've navigated to doing that kind of consulting rather than being the day-to-day knowledge share.
I love that. So how can someone who wants to work with you, how can they reach out?
Well, I try to make it very easy. My name's Rhonda Parker Taylor. So my website's rhondaparkertaylor.com. And all my social medias, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. What
Those
other
are kind of the big ones, and whatever new one they come out with next week, right?
Pinterest, which I love, but I can't seem to keep mine going. So yeah, just reach out, and I'll be glad to work with you and get you your story of success exactly where it needs to be.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for being on and sharing this. I think it's such a great way to reframe that we're all writing a story, and we can either be the one in control holding the pen, or we can let someone else write our story for us.
Exactly. And if you have the idea of wanting to write a book, write it, Crossroads and your novel, we all have a story within us, and just sit down and do it 1 page a day.
Yeah, just get it out and figure out the how later.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate your time and all of your experience and knowledge.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And everybody have a blessed day.
Absolutely. To the listeners, thank you so much for being here. I know you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please make sure to like and share it with your audience. Subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And please have a great day. Until next time.